Before I get to the podcast today, I just want to give a big thank you to you, the listener, to everyone that's listening. These first 3 episodes have been a lot of fun, and I've really, really been enjoying all the feedback I've been getting, either in person, online, via email, text, just everything that people are saying about, what they think about the show, how it could be better, what types of guests they'd like to hear from. It's been really useful, and I love it. So thank you. It was just Thanksgiving weekend, and I am thankful to you, the listener. If you want to connect with me, there's a few ways you can do so. I do have an Instagram account. It's Working Class Hollywood. There's a Facebook page, Working Class Hollywood, and you can also email me. The email is show, SHOW, at workingclasshollywood.com. Also, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to go on to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening and subscribe, rate it, leave a review, whatever you can do. It really is going to help spread the word and get more people listening to the podcast. So thank you again. And with that, let's get to the show. Welcome to Working Class Hollywood. Conversations with people that make the movies, TV shows, and entertainment you love. If you're looking to break into or move up in the entertainment industry, or you're just a fan of content and want to hear about how it's made, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Jeremiah Smith.
Plenty of times in my life, I've put a chicken in the oven for about 20 minutes and then painted it brown and it looks beautiful. No one would eat it without dying or getting terribly sick, but it looks like a perfectly roasted chicken.
My guest today is Kim Seeley. Kim has a very interesting job inside the entertainment industry. She is a culinary producer and works on all types of food shows, ranging from Hell's Kitchen to Food Network Star to Nailed It on Netflix. She also does a bunch of internet stuff on YouTube, which is becoming insanely popular, as everyone knows. She has a really interesting story of how she found this very specific niche that she's in. And I think people are going to enjoy hearing from her. So let's get to my interview with Kim Seeley. All right, I'm here with Kim Seeley. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming over. So Kim is actually one of my wife's oldest and best, closest friends. And I wanted to have Kim on the show because Kim's found a very unique niche. Niche? Did I pronounce that right? Niche, if you will, in the entertainment industry, and you've made quite the long running career.
Yes,
working in food television.
Yeah, 14 years.
So just give me a quick kind of overview of what your title is, what you do, and what kind of shows you have worked on.
Okay. Currently, I am the supervising culinary producer on several cooking shows. The latest show I did was Nailed It and Nailed It Espanol.
On Netflix. A runaway success.
Yes, it is. But I've done everything from Hell's Kitchen and Kitchen Nightmares to Food Network Star to Extreme Chef, a lot of Food Network, and now branching out to YouTube, internet, and Netflix.
Yeah, so Kim's you're a culinary producer.
Yes.
That's kind of the overall encompassing title of what you do, right?
Yes.
So how did you get into it? Well, one, where are you from?
I'm born and raised in Los Angeles.
Native Angelino.
Yes, my stepdad was actually in the entertainment industry. He was local 33. So I grew up around crew, basically. He was grip and lighting, so he was big on soap operas and talk shows. I grew up on sets of Days of Our Lives in Santa Barbara and the Johnny Carson show, transitioning to the Jay Leno show. I was there for the last taping of Johnny Carson. So,
nice.
Yeah.
You have Hollywood in your blood.
Yes.
So you grew up here, and then did you go to college?
I did. I went straight to culinary school out of high school when I was 18 years old. That was back... I think Food Network started the same time that I went to culinary school. And everyone that I went to high school with thought I was crazy because no one was a chef. That was not a profession anybody did. It wasn't cool. No one really understood what it meant. But I knew that's what I always wanted to do. So
And
I
you wanted to be a chef. This was nowhere
Yes.
was like television in
No,
your mind.
not at all. I never dreamed in a million years that I'd end up doing what I've been doing for the past 15 years. But I went to culinary school, and I thought I was going to like work in restaurants and cater, and I just knew I wanted to do food, and that's what I did for a long time. And one day I was working at a restaurant, Napa Valley Grill in Westwood Village, and
I had lunch there once.
oh yeah, and my boss got hired to be the first male on-air sous chef for Hell's Kitchen season 1. And he had started the show, and he called me and said, it's crazy. We didn't realize what it was going to be like, and I need you to come here and work. And I said, okay, I don't know what I'll be doing. And he's like, you'll be running a kitchen. I was like, all right. So I quit my job and showed up to work the next day. And it was me and Mark Peel hiding from the fire guy, cooking on Pelican cases that belonged to Grip and Electric, wherever we could, whatever borrowed space we could find. And I quickly was like, oh my God, this is the weirdest job I've ever had. And eventually we had to be placed into the set to cook. So like if you are a fan of Hell's Kitchen, you know they start off in 2 kitchens, usually males against females. And then when they finally click down to just enough cast members, they switch to 1 kitchen. So if you were privy to the footage back then, like the raw footage, you would see that me and a bunch of people were cooking in the kitchen during service, right next to the other kitchen that was being filmed for service. It was a very strange job. And every day I hired people to work the next day, however many people I thought we would need to produce all the food for the show. And I would do the ordering and worked with the sous chefs. And basically it was like, on that show, it was like running a kitchen. It didn't feel like that crazy television wise, because that show operates very much like a restaurant.
So what was the sous chef's name, the guy that called you?
Scott.
So he was one of the guys that would like help the contestants on camera.
Yes, he
right?
was the leader of the boys team, essentially, the male sous chef under Gordon.
Right.
So he kind of ran the kitchen, and then Gordon would come in and place the orders.
And you were never on camera, so everything you were doing was behind the scenes.
Yes.
What was your title on that first Hell's Kitchen season?
Prep chef.
Prep chef.
Yes, they didn't even have a title for me because I think, this was like 2003 or 4. Culinary producers worked at Food Network, and everybody that worked in television worked on Food Network, and this was for Fox, and it was an odd show. And Gordon, like in England, he had just a small crew, and no one was like television per se. They were all chefs from his restaurants that helped him with these shows. So they didn't really have a name for me. They just kind of made one up, and I got a PA rate when I started.
Nice.
And I worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Wow.
For 3 months.
And so you weren't making the food that the contestants were presenting to the judges. What specifically was like the culinary team and you doing?
So what we would do, because Hell's Kitchen is as much story driven as it is food driven. They have all those challenges and field shoots and all that kind of stuff. So depending on how much time they spent on the field would just wipe away time they had to prep, because Hell's Kitchen's run like a restaurant. It's there's still a certain amount of prep. So like when you go to a restaurant and you order a dish, a line cook will make it right there when you order it, but so much prep goes into all the pieces. Like they had to already have a sauce base made. They already had to have vegetables blanched. They already had to have meats perfectly butchered. They already had to, like, all those components already had to be partially done or perfectly cut and ready for them to heat the dish and assemble it and maybe cook your protein or whatever it is that you order. And so it didn't operate any differently on Hell's Kitchen. So we had these huge lines and a big menu we had to get ready for, because most of the time the contestants were in the field doing a competition or doing a day trip somewhere with Gordon, and they couldn't get all that work done. So they would cook in the restaurant when meals were fired, but all the food had to be prepped for them just coming into the kitchen.
And were you like doing all the ordering of the food and the stocking of the pantry and all that stuff too?
Yes.
So
just like working in a kitchen.
Just running the restaurant. It just happened to be one that was on TV.
Right.
Interesting.
On a soundstage with only 3 walls. So it was different, but yeah.
And how many seasons of Hell's Kitchen did you do?
7.
7 seasons?
7 seasons.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask you, what's Gordon Ramsay like?
He's kind of a combination of everything you see on all the different shows. So when you're in the kitchen actually cooking for him as if you were functioning in a restaurant, he's very much like a European chef. He's demonstrative and loud and kind of crazy and demanding. But when you're off camera, he's funny and charming and just very much like a European chef. You know, he has that personality to the core. I think that's everyone's number one question they want to ask me is what's Gordon's like.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fascinating character on television.
Yes,
obviously very popular. He's got like 12 shows on the air now.
Yeah.
And so when you left Napa Valley Grill to go to Hell's Kitchen, was that like, was there no looking back for you? Did you never go back into restaurants? Was it TV ever since?
No, I did. Because back then, we would only film Hell's Kitchen like 3 months out of the year. And I, at the time, didn't realize this was going to become my career path. So, I did Hell's Kitchen, and then I was like, all right, well, now I got to do something else because that's not going to be happening. So I joined what they call a task force, and I opened a hotel in San Diego. And then I came back to LA, and I was the executive pastry chef at the Viceroy Hotel in Santa Monica for 2 years. And it worked out perfectly that I could always do Hell's Kitchen when it came around. I either had the time off or my boss would let me go. And that was just like another job that I had. It was almost like a catering job or another restaurant job. And when we did, I think it was the first 3 seasons we didn't do back to back. Eventually Hell's Kitchen was like, you'd do 2 seasons back to back. But the first 3 seasons we did them one off.
Once a year.
Yeah. And so when we got to the 3rd season, I quit my job at the Viceroy and I went to do the 3rd season. And then they were like, oh, we have this new show coming out called Kitchen Nightmares and you're going to work on it. I was like, okay. I didn't know what it was. I had never seen it, had no idea what the UK version was. I just knew I had more work and it was another show. And I was like, all right, that's fine. And so I did that. And that was probably my first introduction to what a real television show was like, because it wasn't like running a restaurant. It was much more akin to like what I do now. We traveled all over the country, helped out restaurants. A lot of it was, planned or pre-planned. We made a lot of decisions and, it was very much more like what I do now.
So what point did you go from like, was that the first like culinary producing job? Because,
actually on that show, I was considered on-air talent.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes. So that was my first real credential of on-air talent. I was Gordon's sous chef and I appear on many episodes. Sometimes I appear as an actual crew member of a restaurant and sometimes I appear as Gordon's sous chef. But I was listed as on-air talent for that show and that was 3 seasons.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch because I didn't know that.
I usually look terrible, tired. We never slept on that show. We worked 7 days a week. It was crazy for months. And and I never knew when I was going to be on TV. I just show up for work that day exhausted with no makeup on and they'd be like, hey, you're going to be on TV today. And I'd be like, thanks for the warning.
So you would pretend to work at whatever restaurant they were taking over?
Yeah.
Or you'd be on Gordon's team. People never figured that out. Be like, hey, isn't that the girl from the Blue Crab Cafe in Maine that's now Gordon's sous chef in Texas?
I never watched the shows. So, and I don't really follow the commentary. So someone could have figured it out by now. But, it was only 3 seasons. So it wasn't like, I probably made like 6 appearances over the 3 seasons. So 3 seasons of Kitchen Nightmares. Mm-hmm.
And was that like a more consistent year-round thing than Hell's
still
Kitchen?
No.
Still no.
Still
okay.
no. That between we did 1 season of Hell's Kitchen, season 3, and then we did 1 season of Kitchen Nightmares, and I think that equated to about 4 months of work. And when we wrapped season 1 of Kitchen Nightmares, I went out to dinner with Gordon and his wife, Tana. And I was talking to Tana, and she was like, my friends are moving here from England, and I really think that they would love to have you cook for them in their home. I was like, all right, well, sure. If I had never personal chefed really up to that point. I had done, that's not true. I had done non-conventional personal chefing. So I had worked for the president of Showtime for years, but not full time. So I always worked in a restaurant, but then I would go probably like 3 or 4 nights a week, and I would cook in his home for like people that he wanted to entertain or whatever, because he had a large family and he wanted to be home, and he could afford to have people come in and cook, and he would host meals in his home instead of going out to restaurants so many nights a week. So I would do that, but being a full-time private chef, I had never done that. And I was like, sometimes people say stuff to you in passing and you're like, okay, whatever comes of that, fine. And so I went home after that dinner, and I was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Was I going to go work on a restaurant? Was I going to cater? And I got a phone call, very mysterious phone call, from some woman named Rebecca, and she was like, Tana and Gordon told me to call you. Do you know what this is in reference to? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And she's like, great, can you come in for an interview? And I was like, okay, sure. She gave me an address. I went in, and lo and behold, I was interviewing to be Victoria and David Beckham's personal chef. Had no idea until I got there. That's what I was doing. And so I got the job, and I worked for David and Victoria for probably like a year and a half. The Spice Girls World Tour just happened to coincide with another season of filming Hell's Kitchen and Kitchen Nightmares. So conveniently, I could leave my job, go do that, and then come right back when they got back from their world tour.
Nice.
And go back to work. So that was easy. It worked out well for everybody involved. And then when the next season came round of Hell's Kitchen and Kitchen Nightmares, I was like, all right, I think I've had enough of this Hollywood private chef life. And I went back to Hell's Kitchen and Kitchen Nightmares. And that's when I kind of think, maybe this is like what I should be doing. And so I didn't have that many contacts outside of Fox, but somehow someone got my name and called me to do a show called Extreme Chef. So I did the pilot, and then I did the series. And
that was on Food Network, right?
I was on Food Network. I actually hired your wife.
Yep, I remember.
Because she was the culinary producer too. And I did that show. And at the same time that I was doing that, I had actually gotten a job to work on Top Chef Just Desserts. And I had never been in that situation before, where I had like 2 jobs that were at the same time. And so I had to go to Extreme Chef and say, like, listen, I know you want me to do this season 1. I said, but I've got an opportunity to do Top Chef Just Desserts. And everyone at the time was telling me, like, oh, if you want to be a culinary producer, you got to do Top Chef. Like, that's the thing you got to do. You just got to do it. I was like, all right, well, then I'll do it. And I told them, like, I'll hire someone who's capable of taking my position, and we'll hire the person below them that's capable of moving up. So basically, I'll get everything ready. I'll do pre-production. We'll start. And then when I have to leave for Top Chef, I'll leave, and everybody will just move up. It will be a natural progression, and it'll be like I was never here. It'll be fine. We were on set the first day, and the executive producers came up to me and said, we will literally give you whatever you want to not leave. And
the Extreme Chef producers.
Extreme Chef producers, yeah. And I was like, huh? But it'll be fine. And they were like, it won't be fine. This is like a runaway train. We need you to stay. And I said, okay. And they said, just write out your demands and give them to the line producer, and we will meet them. So I actually went back to the table and told them I wanted a better title. I wanted more money for everybody on the team, because everybody was supposed to make more money.
How generous of you, Kim.
I come from a kitchen, not production. So my work ethic's a little different. But, I said everybody thought they were going to be making more money when I left. And so everybody needs to be making the money they thought they were going to be making. And everybody needs to be okay with their titles. So we need to ask everybody else on the team what they're comfortable with. And they acquiesced immediately. It wasn't even like a thing. They just said yes. So that was it. I didn't do Top Chef Just Desserts. And and I did Extreme Chef, and then
so at this point, well, what title did you have when you left Hell's Kitchen?
When I left
season 7?
Hell's Kitchen, I was still a prep chef.
Still a prep chef.
I was still the prep chef. They still had no title for me whatsoever, and then I was on air talent on Kitchen Nightmares.
Was there a person that was like the culinary producer on Hell's Kitchen,
No.
or they just had prep chefs?
Yeah, they didn't. I was the lead prep chef, I think, when I left.
Fancy.
I don't even know after I left if there is like technically a culinary producer now. I haven't watched the show since like season 1. So I don't really know if they ever did add that as a title, but the 7 seasons I was there, that was never a thing.
So your first culinary producer title was
Extreme
Chef?
Yep.
And you say that's the moment where you're kind of like, because up until that point, you were like really pursuing a career in food.
Yes.
And you just happened to have this like weird random TV show job that you do for part of your year.
Right.
But was it at Extreme Chef where you're like, maybe I should pursue this TV thing?
Yeah. Well, it was actually at the end of season 6 and 7 of Hell's Kitchen and season 3 of Kitchen Nightmares, where I was like, maybe this television thing could like work out. But as I said, I kind of struggled for a while because I didn't really know anyone. I didn't know anyone at Food Network. I didn't know how to meet people. I didn't know anything about production outside of like my stepdad's job, which was Grip and Electric, had nothing to do with me, and working at Fox for Gordon. So it was just a luck of the draw that someone had passed my name out when they were looking for someone to do this show, Extreme Chef, and they figured that I would be well suited for it because I had done Kitchen Nightmares. So I had traveled and set up kitchens in the middle of parking lots and knew how to order food and cook food, and that was honestly what they needed. They needed a chef, not just a culinary producer, because they had 1,000 questions and they didn't know how to answer them, and they didn't know what was viable in a challenge. They didn't know how much time to schedule. I mean, they just had all these questions. So that was one of the reasons why they wanted me to stay.
Yeah. And from there, how long did Extreme Chef last?
I think they did total of 2 seasons.
2 seasons.
We did one crazy season here in California, and then they went to Thailand for the 2nd season, which I turned down because I was like, I don't want to go to Thailand with a production. That doesn't seem like a good idea. and so they did that, and I think that was the last season of Record. And
from there, were you able to kind of like start booking gigs and kind of became like a full-time freelance culinary producer?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, this was like 8 years ago, so it was like 2009 to 2011. I did a few shows here and there. I did the first time I ever did Food Network Star. And I did Extreme Chef, and then I did some stuff for Yahoo. They had a show on Yahoo Internet called Chow Chow with Fabio Viviani from Top Chef. And so I was the culinary producer for that. And I was like, this is great, but I kind of need something that fills in the gaps because it wasn't by any means full-time work. I think I was working maybe 6 months out of the year.
Okay.
So I needed something else. And a friend of mine was like, hey, Melissa McCarthy needs a personal chef. It's a totally chill gig. I was like, well, I could do that. She just wanted someone to deliver meals a few days a week to feed her family. And I was like, okay, great. And I talked to them, and they were fine if a show came up that I wanted to do, that I could take a break. So I was like, great, I'll do that. And so I did. I worked as her personal chef, and I culinary produced in the Holes.
Culinary producer and chef to the stars.
Yes.
Kim Seeley. So at what point, because I feel like now you work a lot.
I do.
And you're like just always in demand. You're always juggling multiple offers from multiple shows.
It's so different than it used to be.
Well, food TV has like really exploded in popularity.
Well, yeah,
for the
because
last
there's so
10
many
years.
outlets now. It's not just Food Network. That used to be like Food Network and PBS, but PBS was like so different. Those shows were a class unto themselves, and the people that did them had been doing them forever. And still to this day in my career, I've never met anyone who's done a PBS show. It's so
PBS,
different.
like public broadcasting?
Yes. That's the home of Emeril originally, Julia Childs, like all these big culinary shows. They were originally a format on PBS.
Oh, interesting.
And so when Food Network opened, that was the first time that there was like a full-time channel that did, because I grew up watching like The Frugal Gourmet and Julia Child and all that stuff on television, and it was on PBS. Yeah. So
it feels so ubiquitous now. Like it just feels like
I know.
every network has food shows, and
Oh, yeah.
chef celebrities have become like the hottest thing. And so like to imagine a time where there was like not food all over TV, like seems.
Oh, it was so different.
Yeah.
Even 10 years ago, it was so different because there was Food Network. So, and then there were like a few shows on Fox and a few shows on, God, what did they have? Not even, I mean, Bravo had Top Chef.
Top Chef, which is still going on.
And I don't even know when Cooking Channel, which is now, folded into Cooking, or Food Network, which is folded now into Scripts, which is folded into Discovery.
Right. Everything's integrating.
But I don't even know when Cooking Channel became a thing. But then it seemed like probably around 2013, maybe, all of these like channels decided that food programming seemed like a thing they wanted to do, and it seemed to become more popular. FYI popped up, and they had a lot of food programming. So it wasn't until, I want to say 2014, that it became like a whirlwind of like, I can't say yes to all the jobs because I don't even have that much time.
Yeah.
So it was a solid 10 years.
So let's talk about the job of culinary producing, because now, going back to your days on Hell's Kitchen where you're just the prep chef, now that's like every food show that's on TV has like a culinary department, right? And the producers do everything from prepping the food, ordering the food, the pantry, but also like they're much more involved in like the creative elements of the show.
Yes.
So it's just, so what would you say? Just like, I've never spoken to a culinary producer before. What does a culinary producer do?
It's interesting because it depends on the format of the show. Competition shows have a totally different daily work life than a stand and stir show, which are like, Trishy or what I worked on that show. And that's where someone just kind of walks into a kitchen and cooks a few recipes in the course of 30 minutes or an hour. And they're very much just standing there cooking. So that's what we call a stand and stir show. So your responsibilities are totally different on, different formats. If you take a competition show, which for a long time, I got a lot of competition shows, especially traveling competition shows or traveling restaurant shows, because I had done Hell's Kitchen and Kitchen Nightmare. So I was familiar with putting out restaurant food in strange settings, mostly parking lots, where everything looked like it was coming out of a restaurant, but it was actually prepped like literally the night before in the kitchen or in the parking lot days prior. And then, we did a service. So everybody in the beginning, that's what I was known for. And if there was a show like that came up, then everyone would be like, who do we call for something like this? And my name would eventually float and I'd get the phone call. So,
there's not a lot of people with that very specific skill set.
No, there is not. So on a competition format, I actually don't cook. It's like a rarity that I cook on a competition format. We set up the pantries. So all those beautiful pantries that you see that get wrecked on every challenge because people run through like maniacs grabbing stuff. We're responsible for filling all the jars and making everything look nice. And a lot of times deciding what's actually in the pantry. So we'll meet with the producers, executive producers, and talk about like what's possible to be in the pantry that fits the budget of the show, what the possibilities are, the outcome of the challenges based on what we put in the pantry, how long it will take to do the challenges based on what we put on the pantry. So there's a lot of like forethought that goes into just even stocking the pantry and how it's going to look. You have to work with the art department and figure out what vessels you're going to use, how it's going to be Greeked.
What does Greeked mean for people that don't know that industry term?
It's basically a way of hiding branding. So, you get a jar of Jiffy peanut butter and, Jiffy's not paying for advertising, so they don't want to say it's Jiffy. So we either have to cleverly disguise the Jiffy label or we have to take the peanut butter out of that jar and put it in a jar that doesn't say anything.
Yes.
So
when I worked on Cupcake Wars, we would spend hours Greeking everything.
People don't realize it's a huge part of food shows.
Yeah.
Greeking.
You have like this massive roll of every colored paper tape under the sun.
Oh, and stickers and markers and
everything.
paint pens and glass jars and plastic jars and containers, and like it's gotten so much more. I remember when I first started, it was like literally just put a dot on it, just put a couple dots on it, take a pay pen and draw a stripe through it, like no one cared. And now it's a thing. Like I nailed it. We actually have nailed it brand stuff. So it looks like everything's from the Nailed It. And I had to actually develop a cake mix specifically for Nailed It. So it was something that, like, it's our recipe for Nailed It, and it says Nailed It cake mix, and it's a thing.
Wow.
So yeah. So that's a huge part of our job is Greeking and the pantry, and our art always helps with Greeking.
And even going back further, like you'll order the kitchen equipment that goes into the stage and stuff.
Yes.
So you'll help build the stage.
Oh yeah, we help build the stage. I'll work with the trade out producers, or I'll do some of it myself and try and get us stuff for advertising. So like we'll reach out to KitchenAid and be like, hey, we're gonna do this baking show, and we won't Greek your KitchenAid mixers if you give them to us for free. So we try and broker all these deals for stuff that's very brand recognizable, so that when people watch the show, they're like, oh, look, they're using KitchenAids. Look, they're using Breville. Look, they're using this. So
I must buy those because it's on TV.
Exactly. But it helps us because we don't have these enormous budgets that are just never ending, and we have to have just hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. And so getting a lot of it for what we call a trade out, like free equipment for advertising, is kind of what we live on, because most of my budget goes to food. I can't afford to buy equipment.
Right.
So
this is on a competition show, which normally takes place on a sound stage.
Correct.
If you're not cooking in a parking lot.
Right.
Your specialty. And what about a more of like a road show or a stand and stir show? What do you do for those types?
Road shows, I have to buy equipment that I can set up off of generators in a parking lot under a tent. So they're usually very minimal. They don't draw a lot of electricity, and I kind of have to know, what do I need? Do I need hot plates? Do I need ovens? Do I need this? Do I need blenders and mixers and all that kind of stuff? And then I have to be able to kind of create this like traveling kitchen that won't deteriorate as we travel. And I have to have everything you would have in a kitchen, but in a very tight, compact situation, so we can move from set to set. And then stand and stir shows is a lot more luxurious because we have like a garage that we prep in. Usually. A garage. Yes. If we're lucky. Because
they film in homes.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we're lucky, the star is very famous and has outfitted the garage for us to actually cook in, which is a case actually for a lot of these shows. A lot of the long running stand and stir shows, the stars will convert their garage to a cooking space for us.
What's the show you do for YouTube? The
Nerdy Nummies.
Nerdy Nummies. That's right. She's like massively big on the internet.
She has way over 10 million followers now. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
I worked for her from when she had like 4 million up to 10
What's her
million.
name?
Rosanna Pansino.
Rosanna Pansino.
Yeah.
So she's like killing it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of people that are like trying to do cooking and food entertainment like independently like that now? Do you get calls for those types of things?
I do. I get a lot of calls for that thing because everyone knows that I did Chow Chow and then I did Nerdy Nummies. So I have this like internet thing that everybody kind of knows about, which is like a weird thing too in the industry. It's its own little niche. So I get a lot of phone calls for YouTube stuff. I got a phone call to do Jordan Sparks. I think she's from American Idol.
American Idol, yeah.
So she has her own YouTube show now.
Oh,
and
good for her.
they called me because they knew I did Nerdy Nummies, and I was like, I can't do it, but I know people who can, and so I referred them, and now they do it. And yeah, but I get random phone calls all the time for these strange YouTube things.
Let me ask you about Nailed It a little bit, because I feel like that show was like really popular. Like
it was a runaway hit. I did not do season 1 and 2. I think they kind of cobbled together a culinary team from someone from New York and someone from LA and some people from Top Chef. And when it became such a hit, they were like, oh, we need someone who really knows baking. And I am a pastry chef. So that was like a thing where Magical Elves, who is the production company that does Nailed It, called me and said, you did Sugar Rush, and so Netflix already knows you, likes you, knows you're a pastry chef. You've already been vetted by them. Can you come do Nailed It? Because it's become extremely popular. I was like, okay, great.
This is season
3 and 4.
3 and 4 that they shot back to back.
Well, yeah, they shot them back to back, and so I think they just released season 3, which we did was like 6 episodes of like holiday stuff, and then I think season 4 will come out like kind of spring of next year.
Gotcha.
So, and then that was so widely popular that they they were looking at, where people were viewing Nailed It a lot, and it just happened to be in Mexico, which is interesting because apparently in Mexico, the competition cooking show is not as big as it is here. So a lot of our contestants didn't even really understand what a competition show was or how it worked. But they were like, let's do Nailed It Mexico. I was like, great. My Spanish is terrible. I haven't worked in a kitchen in so many years. And they were like, that's fine. Just have some people on your crew that can speak Spanish. I was like, no problem. I have those anyway. And so, we did Nailed It Espanol. And that
Did
was
you film it in the same stage? Like
same
here
stage,
in LA?
same stage, same set. Everything is identical. They changed 2 signs, pantry, and I forget what the other one was, but it's still called Nailed It because I'm sure, as being bilingual in Spanish, Nailed It is not an appropriate thing to say in Spanish.
I don't know what the translation to Nailed It would be in Espanol.
The literal translation is not a nice thing to say, apparently.
That's so funny. Was that your first Magical Elves show?
No. The first Magical Elves show I did was actually 2 1-hour specials for Rosanna Pansino. That's actually how I met her.
That she did on TV.
That she did on TV. She actually did them for Food Network.
Okay.
It was a Halloween special and a Christmas special. And it was crazy because she had never done television before. So she had no idea what she was walking into. It was a crazy couple weeks. And the day that I was coming in to interview to do those specials, a friend of mine who was working on Top Chef called me and said, hey, what are you doing today? And I said, I'm actually driving to Magical Elves offices to interview for the show. And she said, great, can you interview for Top Chef? And I said, sure. So I actually went to my Top Chef interview first to do the finale of Top Chef season 13, I think it is. I can't even really remember.
So
it was in
many
Vegas.
seasons.
It was in Vegas. That's all I remember. So I did that, and then I did the interview for Rosanna Pansino, and I got both.
Nice.
So I literally went from doing Rosanna's show to doing Top Chef finale in Vegas to doing Trisha Yearwood, which was also for Magical Elves. So it was like a 4-month frenzy of Magical Elves shows. And then I didn't work for Magical Elves again for like a year and a half.
Have you ever done a full season of Top Chef, like on location?
No, thank God.
And you don't want to?
No.
Why not? Because that's probably like the cooking show that a lot of people think of as like the big one.
It is, but it's a beast of a show from what I've heard. To keep the memento going of like these challenges and the drama of the show, they actually do one challenge after another. So when you see like episode 12, it's literally been shot one day after another. So it's like challenge 1 one day, challenge 2 the second day, challenge 1 the third day, challenge 4 the fourth day, and it just never stops. So I think you work 40 days straight.
Yeah.
And you're traveling for almost every other challenge, and most of it is not on a stage. And it's like Kitchen Nightmares on crack. And that doesn't sound like anything I can handle anymore. I'm way too old for that.
So about Nailed It again, so day to day, like what are you doing? So you show up to set, like what's
Nailed It is such a crazy show. So we have a secret chef named Charity, and
secret chef?
Yeah, that's her official title is secret chef. I don't know, that originated somewhere in the first round of taping that I wasn't part of, but that's her official title is secret chef. And I think originally they wanted her to be like, because they film her making all of these amazing things that the contestants have to replicate.
Right.
And I think originally they thought that she would like be Jacques' his hands, because she doesn't talk. You don't see her. You just see her hands and you see what she's doing. But somewhere in the midst of it, they kind of started publicizing that they had a secret chef. And so when we did season 3 and 4, like I started months in advance working with the secret chef and the executive producers, talking about what the challenges would actually be and what they would look like and what they would be composed of and what the themes would be. And so the secret chef actually spent months working on the products, like the final look of them, and trying to figure out kind of the best way to get from start to finish product on these ideas. And so when we started, they actually want to know on Nailed It, which is unusual for any other show that I've ever worked on. They want to know how big a failure this thing is going to be. They want to know.
Well, that's kind of the hook of the show.
Right. But they really want to know. I mean, most of the time when I get hired for these competition shows, they're like, hey, how long do you think this challenge is going to take? And I'm like, probably like an hour. And they're like, great, we'll give them 50 minutes. I'm like, all right, fine. That's what you want to do. Fine. On this show, they want to make sure that they're giving them as little as time possible, but still have a final product.
Right.
So
I just want it to be the ugliest final product.
Yes, exactly.
that they can make.
So we actually set up a mock stage outside of the soundstage, and we run trials with PAs who have no cooking experience, very much like our contestants on Nailed It, to see what's going to happen. What are they going to get? Are they going to finish this thing? Are they going to get something that's funny? Are they going to get something that's too good? Like, are we giving them too much time, too little time? Are we giving them too much product? Are we giving them too many hints? Like, we work out all those kinks to make sure that we're giving someone an appropriate amount of time to actually accomplish what we need them to accomplish, but knowing it's going to be the funniest accomplishment we've ever seen.
Right.
Yeah. So we start with that, and the secret chef starts her work because it takes a long time for her to get a lot of that stuff done.
Secret chef gets plenty of time to prep her product, right?
Plenty of time might be an overstatement. I think she gets about 16 hours per project. You laugh, but that is not a lot of time.
Compared to like 45 minutes? Or that the 16 hours to 45 minutes, a big difference.
But she doesn't stop. It's almost like, for her, it's almost like she's on Top Chef, because she literally goes, she's doing like 2 or 3 projects at the same time to make sure that they're all done, because we don't have, a lot of times on shows, we have what they call a beauty, and it may not be real. So it's like fake, or, it looks like real food. Like, plenty of times in my life, I've put a chicken in the oven for about 20 minutes and then painted it brown and it looks beautiful. No one would eat it without dying or getting terribly sick, but it looks like a perfectly roasted chicken. But on that show, everything's real. She actually makes everything from start to finish, none of it's fake or weird, and so it cannot sit around for a long time. So she's literally up against the wire, making stuff to be done just in enough time for us to shoot it in a beauty tent where we have a special camera dedicated, just getting like every angle of it, and then going directly out on stage. It's a very tight turnaround for her.
Beauties, also known as food porn.
Yes.
Like on a lot of shows, like on Cupcake Wars, the only real food show I ever worked on, the judges would have to deliver, I forget what it was, 6 cupcakes, 6 final cupcakes,
yes.
3 go to the judge, 3 go to Beauties, and then they go into a little tent or whatever.
Right.
And, that was another thing the culinary producer did on that show, who's my wife.
Yes.
She would do styling of all the food, and you get all those beautiful close-ups as they're spinning around, whatever.
Yes, our job is to make it look like as pristine and beautiful as it could possibly be.
Right. Which is food styling, which is like a whole other career that people do.
Whole
right?
other career that people do, like for print and commercials. Like literally, people sit around for 12 hours and pick perfect Cheerios out of like 20 boxes of Cheerios to get that one bowl of cereal that looks so pristine you want to eat a box of Cheerios.
But you don't really do that.
No, not even close.
You do food styling as part of your job, but you are not a food stylist.
Yes. Well, technically not true. I am also a food stylist. I've done a lot of food styling. I actually did when Santa Monica Seafood here in LA opened their restaurant. I did all of the food styling for their entire menu and their website.
Oh, wow.
And I've done other stuff. I've done food styling for Extra and for Access Hollywood and a bunch of stuff, like stuff for Wendy's and Ballpark. And
well, I take it back, Kim. You do it all.
But I've never actually done like, well, that's not true. I have. I wrote a book for Rosanna last year, and me and a small team, 2 other people, we did all the food styling for the entire book.
You really are impressive. So just to finish off on Nail It. So once filming comes, so like, what are you doing?
So every day we come in, we make sure that everything is appropriate for the upcoming challenge. There are certain things that we have to make sure we pull from the pantry or put in the pantry, depending on what the challenge is. We have to make sure the refrigerators are stocked. We have to make sure the ovens are hot, the dishes are clean, the stations are set, the towels are out. Like literally everything the contestant needs has to be there, and we're responsible for all of that. Then we do a walkthrough with the contestants to show them kind of like, this is the pantry and this is where the stuff is and this is where the blast chiller is and this is your oven and this is how you turn it off and on and this is your microwave and this is a induction burner. And because most of them on that show have never baked, let alone cook very well. Right. So it's a large tutorial. It takes us quite a bit of time to go through all that. And then the show will start, and me or two members of my team stand in front of the contestants as they're baking, and we watch them, and we talk to the executive producers who are in the control room, and we give them a heads up when they are making mistakes, so that they can in turn tell the director what's going on, and the director tells the cameraman what's going on, so the camera points at the problem. So
you're like field producing on that show. Almost.
Yes. And then a lot of times too, there is one field producer on that show who kind of tries to ask questions, but inevitably we end up stepping in and asking questions too. So that they're talking on camera, and we're telling the field producers too. We literally drag them around and be like, here, ask about this, ask about this, ask about that. Because there's one of them and there's three of us, and we're watching the contestants intently, and we kind of know when they're about to step in something horrible.
Right, because you know the food and the product.
Exactly. When they try and put buttercream on a hot cake, we're like, hey, get over here. You're going to want to see this buttercream slide right off the cake. And we do the same thing in a regular competition show like Food Network. We do the same thing. We tell the EPs what's going on so that he can tell the director, so that the cameraman can point the cameras in the right direction. And we talk to the story producers and the field producers and all the producers on the field to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. And they have to do these, endless interviews, and they need to know what to ask about. They need to know what to talk about. They need to kind of know what every story producer kind of has like a couple people they're assigned on the show, and they need to know what those people's competitors are doing too. So we have kind of a big job between working with producers, executive producers, and the culinary team and art department.
It's almost like, in a scripted show like Bones or Law and Order, they would have like a police officer or a lawyer on staff to kind of be their resident expert for the material. You're almost like that for food.
Kind of, yeah. But plus we put all the food out there.
Yeah, plus you do a lot of work.
And we clean it all up.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, all the dishes too, right?
Yes, the stations are a mess. There's tons of dishes. It's amazing what these people do to food and floors and bowls and spoons in the course of a 45-minute competition. It's like the apocalypse. And we are in charge of cleaning all that up and making it look all pristine and new, like no one has ever done that before.
Does Nailed It give you a dishwashing team?
We have PAs.
PAs.
Yes.
I remember on Cupcake Wars, Carrie would just be bitching and complaining because she'd have to stay at the stage until 1 a.m. doing scrubbing buttercream off of pots. And everything.
Yeah. Thankfully, the culinary producer, because now that I'm the supervising culinary producer, I have a culinary producer that works under me, and he and I already know the pitfalls of not having a dish crew, not having people. We try whenever possible to get a really good dish team that we pay more money than we pay PAs, because I'll tell you, the most thankless job is cleaning up the crap after a competition, and people don't want to do it. So
the lights are off.
Yes.
The talent and the producers have gone home.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Just dirty dishes.
Oh yeah. When we're about to do Sugar Rush season 2 for Netflix, and for the culinary producer and I, those are 16-hour days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're long days.
They're really long days. Besides the up to 8 hours of challenge time that we can have in a daytime, we have to reset the kitchen for every team independently. They all have their own pantries. They all have their own equipment. They all have their own needs. Everything has to be cleaned 2 times over, and then we do it all again the next day.
So what do you like about the job, and what do you not like about the job?
I cannot stand monotony. So for me, this is like the best thing ever, because every day is so different. And if I don't happen to like a show or a crew or the talent or whatever, I'm not there so long that it doesn't change eventually, and then I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah, just a few weeks or a few months.
Yeah, and then I'm on to the next show. So I love being around food, but not having restaurant hours all year long. So, if I don't want to work for a little bit, I just say no, which I don't ever do. But I'm trying to be better about that. And I naturally get breaks in shows, and I don't have to work on Christmas. And, that was my big thing about working in the restaurant industry, was I got tired of missing every birthday, Christmas, anniversary, friends' parties, weddings. I just could never go to any of that stuff because I either had to work the weekends, or I had to work the holiday, or I couldn't take that much time off to be gone to travel for something. It was really kind of hard on my family and friends to just always be in a restaurant. And honestly, I wasn't making that much money. I mean, I think when I left the restaurant industry after well over a decade and a half of working in it, I was making $50,000, I think.
A year. Yeah.
And I was working probably the same hours as production, and I got 2 paid weeks off a year.
Yeah.
If I was lucky. If I was working in a restaurant that I actually had like, you know, a real job and like a 401k and paid vacation, that wasn't always a thing. Some
It's
restaurants.
rare in the restaurant
It
industry.
is, but I lucked out and I worked a lot of corporate restaurants. So for me, that was like something that I did get. I did have the occasional 401k, not that it ever got built up too much because monotony's not my thing. So 1 or 2 years and I was out the door.
So what do you not like about the job?
I don't like that we are so dependent on PAs and we don't get to hire them, because a good PA can make or break a show. And when you don't have a lot of PAs that are really good, it's really hard on our team. And we have literally no say of who the PAs are.
So you show up to work and they're like, these are your 4 PAs.
Right.
Like the line producer or production manager's already hired
Or
them.
here's our 20 PAs and you can have these 4 today, and tomorrow you can have another 4, and then tomorrow you can have, and the day after that you can have another 4. And it's like you're constantly, these PAs do a lot of work for us, and they have no idea what they're doing because they're not part of culinary. And we try and train them the best we can, but some of them literally don't really want to be doing what they're doing. They're just waiting to be a producer or whatever. And so trying to get someone to do a job that's not that glamorous to begin with, that involves something they don't even want to be doing in the first place, is really hard. And if you don't have a really good PA who's motivated and smart and understands that the harder they work doing this, whatever gruesome task they're being asked to do today, tomorrow they might be able to do something different because they showed that initiative. And so it's very hard to have people that you depend on work-wise that you have no say over and no control over.
So if someone were interested in this field, culinary producing, food TV, and they wanted to try to get into it, what would your suggestion to them be? How would they go about that?
Well, it depends, because you're really coming to it from 2 routes. Either you're coming from it from a culinary standpoint where you really love food and you want to get involved in food television. So you either are planning to go to culinary school or have already gone to culinary school and you know food. That's a way easier route for a lot of people like me, culinary producers, to bring someone in, because the culinary producer doesn't know anything about food. It's so difficult. And they do exist. Believe it or not.
Oh, there's culinary producers.
Oh yeah, there's culinary producers who are not food people. They have never set foot in a behind the scenes kitchen, never worked on a line, didn't go to culinary school. It's still shocking to this day to me, but yes, there are culinary producers who don't literally know anything about food. They handle more the producing side of it and kind of just wade through the other parts that they don't understand. And you can kind of see it in the shows that you watch.
But it could be a good thing for someone to try, maybe that it already is in the restaurant industry, is a chef, or like kind of like you did, and like maybe try to start finding opportunities on these culinary staffs.
I mean, it's not always, but sometimes our names do pop up in the credits very briefly for a quick second. If you pause the television, you can actually see it. And those are the people that you want to reach out to. Barring any of that, Food Network still has a huge externship and internship program. They hire a lot of people on a daily basis, PAs and stuff, and they have internally groomed a lot of people up to culinary producing by starting as PAs in the kitchen and working their way up, acknowledging that they want to get into food production.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And Hugo, my culinary producer, who I hire a lot of the times, he went to culinary school, and then his externship was actually at the Food Network. And so he worked for free for them as part of his, like, the end of his schooling for 3 or 4 months or 6 months, maybe. I don't remember how long it was. And through that, he met a ton of people and has a ton of connections. And that's how his career got kicked off.
Is that they do that out in New York?
Yes.
They're headquartered in
New York, yes.
right?
In Manhattan.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're young or old, but you're totally dead serious about wanting to do this, that's kind of the easiest inlet into it, because that is kind of the chain. And, they have that program set up, and they're interested in people who want to take that path and are good, and they're good at weeding people out who are not going to be good at it. And, if you're in LA and you're trying to figure out, how to get into food production, if you ask around long enough, usually you'll bump into a chef who's worked on a show for a few days as a day player or whatever, and they can give you someone's number and you call them, and then, maybe they'll refer you to somebody else if they're not doing it anymore, because there are a lot of culinary producers who come and go. They don't want to hang with it. It's weird hours, and it's not job security, and it's like, it has a lot of drawbacks. So, eventually your name will get passed around. And a lot of times too, like when I'm doing specific shows, if I need like a chef, or I need food stylists, or I need people who could just cook, or someone's sick and I need someone to fill in, the first people I reach to are chefs. So I'll start calling my friends who still work in restaurants, or I'll call my friends who are off for the day or whatever, who work in restaurants, and be like, hey, can you come work for a day? I can pay you more money than you make on the line. And they're like, okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. So, that's usually the best way to get in.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is really fun and really interesting. It's such a weird job that you have.
It's such a weird job. I sometimes don't even know how I ended up doing this.
Well, if you listen to this podcast, you can hear the whole story.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you
welcome.
for sitting down with me
Of
and
course.
sharing your story.
Yes.
It was really good.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. That was my chat with Kim Seeley. Such an interesting story. Such an interesting job. Like, who knew that job even existed? And Kim becomes like such a highly in-demand culinary producer. She's turning down work all the time. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate all the feedback I'm getting. If you're enjoying the show, go on to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening and subscribe, rate it, leave a review. That's going to help get the word out for this show so more people can hear it. You can email me too. The email address is show, SHOW, @workingclasshollywood.com. I'd love to hear from you, whether it's feedback of what you think I could do better, what types of guests you think I should have on, or if you have a suggestion for someone you think I should interview inside the business. I'd love to hear it. So thank you again for listening to Working Class Hollywood, and I'll see you guys next time.